I'm Joe Pardavila. You are listening to the Forbes Books Podcast, and we hear a lot about supply chain issues, and I'm old enough to remember when the world ran out of toilet paper. But there's something else that's been in short supply recently, and that's kindness. A few years ago, my guest identified that problem, and like any great entrepreneur, she set out to fix it. Her name is Andra Liemandt, and she is the founder and CEO of Austin-based The Kindness Campaign, a national nonprofit devoted to research-based emotional intelligence and anti-bullying. She's joining me to talk about the inspiration for the Kindness Campaign and how her team is creating and providing accessible emotional health curriculum and programs to both children and adults in homes and classrooms. Andra, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So Andra, I know this is going to sound weird, but I feel like the word kind had its coming out party in 2020. Thanks to the pandemic and social activism, people started to embrace kindness. But you were kind before it was cool. You started the Kindness Campaign back in 15. Talk to me about this kindness journey for you and why you gravitated to that word.
So I love that you say that. That's really fun that you're like kind before it was cool. It didn't feel cool, honestly. It really didn't feel like a word that people were embracing back whenever I was talking about it. It felt like, it's a natural thing for people to maybe do and to possibly to embrace when it's gifted to them, but not to really talk about. And especially in corporate America or in schools, it's depending on what circles you're in. It's an interesting thing. There was a lot of anti-bullying and a lot of things like that going on around me. But whenever I started the Kindness Campaign, it was really, something that was not intentional. It was really birthed out of a heartache, my own heartache with a dear friend of mine's daughter who had committed suicide. And she was very young. She was 12. And it was a very sad time in my life. And I was really in my own home trying to create something that was positive and out of a very sad situation and pain that I was going through, and in a conversation that my two children could understand. That conversation of suicide was big, and I didn't fully know how to even have it. And my girls were really young, and we were all sad. And so the only thing I knew how to talk about at the time was kindness and how that could possibly make a difference for them, for me, and to heal people. I felt like at that time with little people that was the answer, that was a solution that could bridge that possible heartache that was happening. I thought maybe the young girl who had taken her life at that time, if she had known that around the hill, around that corner where she felt so much pain, that there was someone wanting to be kind to her in the midst of all the bullying that was happening to her, that maybe she might have waited just one more day, And sorry, it always gets me a little bit. And so that's where that word really came from, because in the beginning, I really was scared for my girls to grow up in a world where children took their lives because they just felt lost, like there was no hope. And I needed them to see that there was hope. And so that the little character we created together at our kitchen table was called Enoughy Buddy, based on the fact that they were enough. And all of those words to me were positive. And all I heard in schools was anti this, anti that. And I thought, let's bring a more positive spin to something that I feels really heavy and hard for kids to hear. And let's just make joy out of something that feels really hard right now.
Interesting, because that was going to be my follow-up question, because you always find these organizations that are against something, and nothing against them, but they're always against fill in the blank, whether it's a disease, a social cause, but yours is actually for something. And so that was totally intentional. That's what it sounds like.
It may have just been me being naive. It was, and it felt like I was definitely swimming upstream in the very beginning. And it's not that I don't appreciate the others. I work with them. I very much believe we have to move together as a team. I think to have growth, to have progress, really to have community, you have to work together. This is a very large conversation that we're having even more today, based on the fact that there's such research out there right now, new research from the CDC, reporting that this problem that I was talking about years ago has just been amplified based on what we've all been through with COVID. And teens now, it's even gotten younger than what the reports were whenever I started. But reports 4 in 10 teens are reporting that they feel sad and hopeless now. 1 in 5 are saying they've contemplated suicide. And back then, the stats were a little bit lower than that. And so the crisis is really knocking on our door at a larger rate. It is a national crisis. And so when we talk about it, it's not something that my organization can just go and cure or solve. It is all of us together. It's the anti-bullying. It's the organizations that, I work with so many around Austin and nationally. I've worked with Born This Way with Lady Gaga. I've worked with Just Keep Living Foundation. These are after school programs, to new organizations that are just launching, like Ugly, and all of these foundations. And we all have to come together and to find solutions where maybe I don't have the answer, they do. And let's figure out how we solve it together.
And not to age us both, but I believe we're both card-carrying members of Generation X. And so...
Yes.
We recall when we were younger, a long time ago, bullying was very direct. It was very much in your face. When you were bullied, you knew it. But now, because of the rise of social media, people can get bullied without even leaving their house, which to me is the scariest part of it, because I was the fat kid in school who got picked last in gym class. So I felt it at school, but when I got home, I came home to a loving family who loved me for what I was, and I couldn't get away from it. But now it seems like kids can't get away from it. Is this probably why we're seeing this rise in childhood depression and suicide? Is social media, and I hate to blame social media for everything, but can we put a little bit of blame on social media for this?
100%. I absolutely agree with you. I think that having guardrails, I think it connects and it disconnects us to feelings. I think that, FOMO is a real thing. I think self-image is something that is very delicate. And depending on where you are in your life, when you are looking on social media, it's very important to know who you are as you're walking that road with social media. And it's hard, even as an adult, right? So being able to have your values in place, your sense of self-worth, being able to say, I feel seen, I feel heard, and not searching for it out there first, but knowing that you are grounded in who you are, and then going there for connection or for some other things that feel like, oh, I'm doing these things as an additive, not as the reason to exist, or to make sure you feel that you're putting some different things out there. I think today's teens and younger, depending on when they're on social media and depending on how much social media they're on, it's becoming harder for them to swim between the picture of who they are out there versus who they are in the real world. And there's games, there's all kinds of things that are adding up. So it becomes more important for them to pour really valuable information into their core, so that they can really know and identify those values, the core values of who they are, and do that work. That work is very, very crucial.
I want to go back to the beginning of the kindness campaign, but I want to go further back because your journey here has taken a quite circuitous route, from what I understand, to say it lightly. You had a couple kids, you worked corporate jobs, but then all of a sudden you had this moment, as you mentioned earlier, about starting the kindness campaign. What prepared you to do that at that point in your life? Because you've done. I forgot to mention you're also in a rock band. So why did you feel like at that point in your life you were ready to take this on, putting together this nonprofit that was not only going to hopefully just work wonders locally, but also abroad and across the country? Why did you think you could do it?
Joe, I don't think that we're ever ready to do, I don't think we're ever ready to do anything. I think when you're called to do something, you just step in the shoes and you walk forward. I have been called to do this. I hire people that are, and really we were a very small team. Every step of the way, and I hesitate here because every step of the way, I just every opportunity kept propelling me forward. I had a little bitty journal that I put together I had a friend help me put it together, Xeroxed copies for my daughter's school. And then the school principal championed it. It went into 5 more schools. Then I met, it was just like a chance meeting for the next thing. The next thing was I ran into the director of health and wellness for AISD, who ran over 82 schools. And she said, "Oh, this should be an AISD." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, wait, what?" So I was never thinking I should do this ever, or that I was qualified. I just said, "Okay." So then I thought, well, I need a counselor or someone to be doing this. And then I thought, this journal isn't it. Let's go back and redo it. And I kept questioning and asking. The journal I originally made was in a vacuum. It was made for my daughters. This is never something that I created that I said is a solution for schools. So I would say that I'm a big questioner. Like, is this what we need? Is this what your school needs? And so whenever I meet with schools, and even back then I met with, AISD, and I said, this was the very first thing that I made. I need to hear where are the problems? What are you guys, what are you needing? And they said 1 in 4, students come into the school system having experienced some kind of trauma by the time they are 3 years old. And I was heartbroken. I was like, are you kidding me? And then they said, and our high school students have nothing. And they had nothing at the time. And I said, great. And at the time I had Lori Hobby, who was working with me, and she was like, it was her week 1 on the job. And I said, we're going to get to work and this was, at the end of the school year. And I said, we're going to take this summer and we're going to create curriculum for your 3-year-old, pre-K 3-year-olds. And we're going to come and we're going to be able to launch that with you for all your schools. And that's what we did. And to me, I just felt like asking, if you show up willing, with your heart forward, knowing that this is your calling, and you get the right team in place, and you ask the questions of what the need is. And we just started small. We said, we'll do it for that group, because that's going to build a foundation. It's going to take time to create the big change, but we're going to start with the foundational tools with those kids. If the 3-year-olds are experiencing trauma, let's start with them. And long term, we'll see great results. So we built products starting with 3-year-olds. And since then, we've built products all the way to high schoolers, which we're launching now. Wow. So that's been my journey. And I just keep hiring experts, because at the end of the day, I got into this because I'm passionate about helping children, and I never want another child to take their life, because I know that they are right now. And that's my passion. And I'm not qualified, but I'm qualified because I care. But I bring in the experts because they are going to be the ones that are going to help me champion this into the schools. And then I just ask questions.
So it almost sounds like you've become the accidental founder of a movement. There was no master plan here.
Yeah, exactly. That and one big piece that we're kind of leaving out, which at the same time that you said I was in a band, and I was I'm a drummer in an all-female rock band. And at the exact same time that we were, that this happened to my friend's daughter, I was touring around with this massive magic mirror that, if you go and Google, the Mrs. Magic Mirror on YouTube, there is this mirror that we created to help women see themselves as enough. And the reason we did that was because prior to all of this, I kind of felt like I wasn't enough. I was trying to, raise 2 daughters, and be the perfect wife and all these things. And I was learning the drums. I'd learned later in life, and I was trying to have a music label, and I was doing all these things that I felt really weren't I just felt ill-equipped, right? I mean, every day you're on the job training as a mom. Like I always tell my now 16 and 14-year-old that I've never parented a Kate that's 16 or an Elle that's 14. I'm like, so I'm on the job training, and this is new and fun and different, but I'm gonna fumble and make mistakes. And so when they were little, I felt really uncomfortable in all the things, and I was new, and it was hard and challenging. And as a wife, I feel the same. And so I'm fumbling every day. And so with the band, we created this mirror to tell this story of enough. And the magic mirror video went viral. And as it did, people were asking us to, we were on Good Morning America, the Queen Latifah show. We were touring around with this huge magic mirror, helping people see themselves as enough. We'd ask them one question: how do you feel when you look in the mirror? And they would go on these journeys with us. Well, sadly, what we would see is that people would not, they actually were tearing themselves down in front of the mirror. And so we'd walk them through in less than 5 minutes, kind of just these ways that they were valued and seen. And really we would see delightful changes within these 5 minutes. It was not what we intended with our music video, but it is the result of what happened. We went to, the Top of the Rock in New York, the Mall of America. We toured all over small towns in Texas to you name it. And it was beautiful. So this was happening all around the same time when my friend's daughter took her life.
Wow.
And so I just heard pain all over the country, and where the people felt isolated. For the first time, I was hearing children come out and say they were gay, or they felt alone, or the National Eating Disorder Association, children were talking about, and parents were talking about those pains, or cancer survivors. So I think in the midst of all of that, I felt that there was a lot of heartache happening in our world, in our nation, and that is what really kept propelling me forward. And so those that one-on-one was what was happening for me during this time.
How do you process all that pain you were getting at once, whether it was with the magic mirror, your friend's daughter passing away? Because when you speak to doctors about the fact that they become immune to death after a while, is that something that you worry about, that you become immune to hearing painful stories, or what is that balance like? Because you can't take them all on, because you wouldn't be able to survive as a human being if you absorbed all this pain and agony from people. So how do you? It's a delicate balance. I can only assume.
It is, and as a team, we have a lot of self-care that we do for ourselves. It is, like I said, we have a pretty small team, a very loving, caring team, and we do make sure that we take time for ourselves. And I do, in particular, for myself. I do a lot of, whether it's meditation, I work out every day. I do some pretty off the wall light therapies to acro yoga recently, but I do things because I think it's important to make sure that we are not taking it all on. And I think that it can get challenging at times. We have what we call, with our magic mirror people that are really connected to hearing stories, we do a separate sound bath and healing process for them. So that's very separate.
Mm-hmm. And anything can be politicized these days. And now more than ever, you're hearing about school curriculum as part of the political divide. What's it like trying to get the kindness campaign's curriculum into schools? I'd love to know what that process is like. I can't imagine anyone being against kindness, but again, anything is anything is possible in 2022. So talk to me about how that works.
Yeah, so it is quite a process, and we just presented at South by EDU, and it was so great. The biggest takeaway for anyone kind of thinking about creating curriculum or really engaging around that process is, if somebody's in the space and they're doing something that's really working, let them do it. And that's kind of been my motto. I didn't come into the space thinking I was going to, take over Castle. Castle's doing SEL and doing it well. Great. Yay. They're solving for a problem that's needed. So really, when we walked into schools, we were supplemental, and we are art infused SEL. And what that means is that a lot of our projects, programming is really designed to take children and adults through art-based programming. So whether it's music or whether it's actually doing, some kind of physical art, painting or something like that. So it's very different. So for us, a lot of times schools are reaching out to us through our website, definitely through when we're on, at events like South by or big superintendent conventions that they've reached out to us to come and present, or just, parents hearing about us and wanting us to come through the PTA. So there's a lot of different ways. Counselors, I wouldn't say there's just one streamlined way that people reach out or that we move into schools. It is a hybrid of ways that we are connected to the school systems. And we are a different program. We move in to create cultural shifts. And we do that with our art-infused social emotional learning programming, where, kids are learning how to write a song for the first time, and they do their school anthems using SEL programming. And now they have their spring song that then they later perform. And so it's a lot of fun, a lot of team building, a lot of things like that, where they can just do it, without us even having to be on campus, or we can be. So things like that. So it is an interesting process. I'd like to say there was a secret, answer to that, but there's no real one way to do it. We do host fireside chats during the fall, and in the spring we do really neat ways for I forgot what they're called, but they're like spring chats for teachers and community, people to get involved and talk with our integration specialist. So, we're always engaging, wanting them to know, wanting any educator to know that we're not, we don't just sell curriculum and then walk away. It's very much a relationship.
And I'm curious, I speak to a lot of for-profit entrepreneurs. What's it like to be a nonprofit entrepreneur? Are there any differences between the two? Can you help me out there? Because, again, I don't speak to a lot of nonprofits these days.
There is, because you have to obviously get funding, and there's a lot of rules around how you can accept funds. And we have a nonprofit CPA on staff, and it's just really critical with the taxes and that side of things. But I would say the entrepreneurial spirit and the way that we function and the networking and just how we innovate and create are very similar. And as for the kindness campaign, we are entrepreneurial. So, coming out with metaverses and we're looking at, Bitcoin and all the things that I would say every entrepreneur company is doing. I would say it's very similar. You have to have an entrepreneurial spirit to be a nonprofit, and it's tough, right? Just like any entrepreneur is doing a raise, we're constantly in that same mode. And we're always innovating and creating. So we're young too, as far as a nonprofit. So maybe we just have more of that spirit in us, but I love it. And of course, we're very much in the Keep Austin Weird theme. So we tie everything to the arts, and we paint buildings, and we encourage kids to do art and all these fun things. So I like to think of us as on the fringe of just being more in that space of being an entrepreneur versus living in the nonprofit space, even though we definitely are a nonprofit because we abide by all of those rules.
I see. So it's like being an entrepreneur with a couple more strings attached to it in terms of what you got to get done and what's allowable.
Yeah, we've always got to consult a lawyer before we can, do anything, which is great. Keeps us very above board and keeps us straight. Yeah.
All right, so I've got sort of a personal question for you because earlier we mentioned the fact that we're both Gen Xers. I don't have kids, but you now have teenage kids, and I'm curious. We're the first tech-savvy generation having tech-savvy kids. So before us, it was the boomers were kind of late to the party when it comes to tech. So talk to me about the relationship between having a tech-savvy kid and a tech-savvy parent. Is there pushback from both ways? Like, does your daughter say, "Mom, why are you posting that picture?" And are you going back to her and saying, "Why are you doing that?" I'm curious about how that dynamic works.
This is such a great question, by the way. My daughters are tech savants, and I do not post a picture. Well, I have in the past, so I'm going to admit that. But I learned really quick not to post a picture without asking them. And they sat me down and we had a real conversation around it. And I respect that. I think that, and then I often have to ask their help around tech and just, how to do things. They can both code. They can definitely outschool me on they can build apps, they're just, and I just am not, I don't focus my time there. They both, my daughter has a blog, Austin Scholar, and she built her own website. She did all of it herself.
Wow. So it's safe to assume that they're the parents when it comes to the social media. They've taken that dynamic where they're the ones okaying the photo. Out of curiosity, what kind of photos do they not like of their mother being out there? Is there one in particular or style that they're just like, no, Ma, don't do that?
Oh, my daughter over Easter recently, my younger one went through, in front of my entire family, went through my entire Instagram and evaluated all of my pictures. I wish we could have videoed her doing that. And so I said, great, you get to do my next photo shoot and you get to tell me what I can and can't do and what you approve and what you don't approve of. She's like, this one's okay, this one's not. I was like, great, you tell me what I should or shouldn't do. But in general, I try not to post my family or anything that would slightly embarrass them.
Right.
And I try to keep everything very focused on what I consider my business objective or my values, which I think hopefully, and just putting positive energy into the social media platform. I really do search for kind, motivational, or even just stories of my life that I think are kind of funny, that are like normal, like mom things or whatever, that wouldn't make them be the subject of something. It is a fine line. I don't want to share too much of my own life about them, but so I am trying to protect them, but I also feel very compelled to be real. So there's definitely a line you walk, and I want to respect them.
All right. So in closing, we started this conversation talking about the inspiration for the Kindness Campaign, and it had a lot to do with the fact that you didn't know what kind of world your daughters were going to come into. Now we're fast forwarding. My math is terrible, but 7 years later, how do you feel your journey with the Kindness Campaign has helped you being a mother, and the way obviously your kids turn out to be rock stars? So I'm almost answering my own question here, but talk to me about the intersection of being a mother and launching and growing the Kindness Campaign.
Ooh, wow, that's a heavy question for the end. With it's almost like you're. So I just feel like this is such a big question. Thank you for asking this question, and thank you for allowing me to speak about the Kindness Campaign and what it's meant to me over the years, because this journey has been such a beautiful one in the way that I have been able to learn not only from my mistakes, from just the sheer being able to understand like what it takes to run a nonprofit, but also from the beautiful people on my team. My team are some of the brightest, smartest, beautiful people, and I learn every day from them. And they have influenced me in ways I'll never even know. But I do know that the things that I take away from them help me be a better person and a better mom, a better wife. And the people that you spend your days with are the people that really impact who you become. And so I know that that is something that I'm happy that my girls get to see. My girls get to see me wake up and be happy that I get to share this with those people, but then even being in the community and the way that we get to touch the lives of so many. It's hard work, but it's love work. And my girls get to know that that's what we do. We spread kindness all over the world in ways that we will never know truly the impact of that.
Well, I know you feel lucky for your team and for your girls and your husband, but after speaking with you for the last 40 minutes or so, I feel like they're all lucky to have you in their world as well.
Well, thank you. It's a blessing. Thank you.
Andra, thank you very much for joining me today. Sorry for putting you through that emotional roller coaster. I've been accused of making these podcasts into therapy sessions, so I hope you're doing okay after this one.
I'm doing great. That was such a joy, and you're really such a pleasure to talk to, and I just appreciate you very much.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Andra. Good luck and God bless. And Andra, just so you know, I close every podcast out, and I'll just do it a little early here. I'm a huge proponent of the golden rule. I'm not very religious, but I'm very much about, treat others as you expect to be treated. And I feel like the kindness campaign takes a little piece of that and just propels it and makes it easier for people to understand, because sometimes it's hard to tell people what you're feeling and try to detect how they're feeling. But I always say, as long as you treat everyone like you want to be treated, it makes your life a hell of a whole lot easier to live.
That is so true. And I feel like I'm back at my mama and my dad's house. I love it.
Well, Andra, thank you so much for the time. Good luck with the kindness campaign, and cannot wait to see what you guys come out with next.
Thank you. And I really appreciate this opportunity and just to meet you.
She is Andra Liemandt, the founder and CEO of the Kindness Campaign. Find out more about her organization at tkckindness.org. And that's it for this episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure you take a quick second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.